Hello everyone, how are you? Today I'll teach you some simple techniques to animate buildings. You can download this blend file for free, where you'll find different animation options that I will show you today. You can implement the same techniques in any creation you like, which is what I did to make this render, but more about that at the end of the video. Okay, let's begin. First, let's make this base. Scale the default cube on the Z axis. We need to change the cube's origin to the bottom. Select the bottom face, Shift S, move cursor to selected, and set the origin to the 3D cursor. Apply the scale. Before we start animating, remember you don't need to choose the same frames as me. In frame 10, press I and insert a location keyframe. In frame 1, move the object up a bit and insert a location keyframe. In frame 5, insert a scale keyframe. And in frame 1, scale to 0 and insert a scale keyframe. Let's add a bounce effect. In frame 13, scale down on the Z axis a bit. Insert a scale keyframe. Open this channel and duplicate these scale keyframes, which are the final size keyframes. You could also make a bounce effect by playing around with the different interpolation modes. Let's move these keyframes a bit. I'm gonna move these location keyframes. You can try moving the keyframes and see if the animation looks more pleasant. To be honest, it's a trial and error process. Let's move the base up a bit to make the movement more noticeable and insert a location keyframe. Let's move these keyframes. Now the scale and location are animated in unison, so we could move some keyframes to break that monotony. So I'm gonna move these location keyframes only, without moving the size keyframes. Now the base turns big first and then moves down. Let's create and animate the building. For this demonstration, I'm gonna make a very simple building, but you could make more complex shapes. Apply the scale. We could move the origin down and animate the scale like we did with the base, but I'm gonna use a different technique instead. Create two shape keys and make sure you have the second one selected. In edit mode, move this top face down. Choose the frame where you want this animation to start. Set this value to 1 and press I to create a keyframe. And in another keyframe, take the value to 0 and create a keyframe. Now we need to make the building disappear at the beginning. So in the frame where you made the first keyframe, insert a scale keyframe. Go back one frame, scale to 0, and insert a scale keyframe. Let's see. I want this animation to be a bit slower, so I'm gonna move these keyframes. This is a pretty simple animation, but you could add more shape keys to create more complex animations. If you'd like to see another example of how to use shape keys, you can check this video out, where I used this technique to make the tape and the box disappear. I also animated these stairs using shape keys. And you can do more than just moving or extruding faces. You can also use shape keys to rotate faces to create animated lines, for example. To create the holes for the windows, add a cube, and we're gonna use this object as a boolean. So make sure it is a bit inside the building. I want several windows, so I'm gonna add an array modifier. And I want 2 more rows, so I need to add another array modifier. You could create a door as well, add windows on the side, or even create a different kind of shape for the windows. Add a Boolean modifier to the building. And remember to hide the Boolean objects in viewport and in renders. I'm gonna enable cavity so it's easier to see the objects. And now we have holes for the windows. Let's take a look. You could leave it at that, but if you'd like the holes to be animated as well, we could animate the Boolean objects using shape keys like we did for the building, or using the basic transformation tools, which is what I did. Now we need the origin to be in this outer face. In frame 48, insert a scale keyframe. Choose the frame where you want the animation to start. Scale the rectangles down on the y-axis until they are no longer touching the building, and insert a scale keyframe. And remember to hide the Boolean objects in viewport and in renders. Now, what if I don't want to animate the holes at the same time, but by rows? We will need to apply the array modifiers and separate the objects by loose parts in edit mode. And now they are separated. Let's take them to a new collection. Now we need to move the keyframes of each rectangle. I recommend you space them evenly. Let's move this row so the animation starts sooner. And now do the same with the other 2 rows. I left 2 frames between each keyframe. And let's finish the last row. Change the Boolean modifier's source to our new collection. Let's take a look. The Boolean modifier can be used in different ways, not just for creating holes. In another project, I used the same modifier to hide the windows and to create a reveal effect. Here I used this cube to hide the top window, and then I added another cube to hide the bottom window. And I did the same for the other windows. Let's see the final animation. And that's another way of using the Boolean modifier. Now I'm gonna create these animated frames in different styles. First, we need to model the window frame. Let's duplicate this rectangle. And it has to be a bit bigger since it's gonna be the frame. Select both the front and back face and inset face. Add a loop cut in the middle and bevel. Delete these faces and we have the window frame. Extrude along normals a bit and delete these faces. Now fill the edges Switch to face mode and fill these faces. Now do the same with the remaining edges. Let's delete these keyframes and add two array modifiers since we have several windows that need a frame. Let's scale this up a bit. We could also add a glass. In Edit mode, add a plane, scale it and place it. Make sure the glass is not covered by the building. First, let's make this simple animation for the window frames. Insert a location keyframe and in another frame, move the windows to the back of the building a bit until they disappear and insert a location keyframe. We could create a bounce effect, like we did at the beginning of the video. Duplicate the final keyframe and in the previous one, take the windows forward a bit. Insert a location keyframe. Now we need to hide the windows. So in the first keyframe, insert a scale keyframe, and in the previous frame, scale to 0 and insert a scale keyframe. Let's take a look. I'm gonna show you another way of animating the windows. Delete all the keyframes but the last one, since it's the final position for the windows. Remove the array modifiers. We need to change the origin to the bottom face. Since we changed the origin, now the object has moved, so let's place it and insert a location and rotation keyframe. Go a few frames back and rotate on the x-axis. And move along the z-axis, press Z 2 times so we move the object along the local axis and take it to the inside of the building until it disappears. Insert a location and rotation keyframe. It looks a bit weird, so I'm gonna duplicate this keyframe and move the object on the z-axis. Insert a location and rotation keyframe. In the first keyframe, insert a scale keyframe and one frame before that one, scale to 0 and insert a scale keyframe. Let's move these keyframes a bit so the animation is a bit faster. And let's separate some location and rotation keyframes. Move these location keyframes before the rotation keyframes. Now move these location keyframes and move the object a bit closer to the building. And insert a location keyframe. The animation still looks a bit weird, so this time I'm gonna move these rotation keyframes before these location keyframes. Move the objects towards the building a bit and insert a location keyframe. Now we can add two array modifiers again. The problem now is that all the objects are rotating towards this origin, so we need to fix that. Apply the array modifiers. We need to separate each window in edit mode. Remember to be in X-ray mode so you don't miss any faces. And separate by selection. And we need to do this with every window we have here. Let's put all these new objects in a new collection to keep things organized. The top row looks fine, but we need to change the origin of the other windows. Now that we have changed its origin, this object has moved to the top. Instead of changing every single keyframe, we could simply change the delta transforms. Delta transforms are transformations that are applied on top of the primary transforms. Now we need to repeat the process with the remaining windows. Change the origin to the bottom, and move using the delta transforms. We could copy the set value from this window we already placed. And now we can also copy the X value from this row to place the bottom window faster. You could use delta transforms to copy an animation from one object to another one in the same project or in a different one. That will save you time by not animating everything from scratch. I'm gonna show you how to do that real quick. Since I'm gonna copy the animation to a different project, let's copy this animated object to this other project. Since the animation has scale keyframes, we need to do an extra step. Apply the scale to deltas. Select the mesh you want to copy the animation to. Now select the animated object, press Ctrl L and link animation data. And here we have our window and both objects have the same animation, but if we animate either of these objects, the other one will get animated as well, and I don't want that, so go to Relations, Make Single User, Object Animation. Let's see if it worked. Let's undo the new keyframe. Now we need to change the scale keyframes using the scale values we saved as delta transforms. Again, this is an extra step if you have scale keyframes in your animations, so you don't have any problems with the size of your object. Insert a scale keyframe and reset the delta scale values. And now we can place the window using delta transforms. And here we have it. Now we can move the keyframes of each row to create this kind of effect. Select the bottom row of windows and move their keyframes. And repeat the process. I'm gonna make sure the keyframes for the 3 rows are equally spaced. The last row ends its animation in frame 48, the second row ends in frame 55, that's 7 frames of distance. 55 plus 7, the first row should end in frame 62. And here it is. And you could even take it further and have each window animated at a different time instead of by rows like we just did. I'm just gonna do the first row as a demonstration, but I'm not going to do the rest, so this video is not too long. But you can find the windows animated like this along with all the other variations in the free blend file. Changing the camera type to orthographic and enabling depth of field will give you a nice effect. By using all these techniques, I made this animation. You can get the blend file link in the description. If you'd like me to upload a time-lapse on how I created this animation from scratch, let me know in the comments. To recap, to animate objects you could use either shape keys or the transformation tools. You could even use geometry nodes if you're more experienced. Remember, you can use shape keys not for simple animations only, but for more complex ones as well, by adding several shape keys. If you're using transformation tools, remember that the placement of the pivot point will have an impact on the animation. Don't forget about delta transforms either, if you like to move or rotate an object that is already animated without having to change its keyframes. Delta transforms will also be really helpful to copy the keyframes from one object to another without the need to animate everything again. Keep in mind the space between the animations to create a more even feeling. Break the animation between the different type of keyframes like we did today with the location and rotation keyframes, so your final video doesn't look stiff. A little bounce effect will give your animation a bit more flavor. You can achieve it by playing with the interpolation mode or manually using keyframes. I also recommend you learn about the graph editor, easing and interpolation modes to take motion to the next level. To create a perfect loop animation, instead of copying all the keyframes again in the inverse order, you can duplicate the footage and reverse it with a simple click on any image editor software. That way you will also be saving time by rendering fewer frames. Downloading animations by your favorite artists and watching them frame by frame is really helpful to dissect how you can recreate something similar. You can also look for free websites where to decompose any GIF into individual frames to analyze any animation. Remember, you can download this blend file for free where you'll find all the animations I showed you today. And if you liked this video, you are probably gonna enjoy my other animation videos. As always, thanks for watching and see you in the next one. Bye!